Hey everybody, this is Craig. Welcome back to Stumpy Grump Scale Speed Shop. And I got an update with the USACC 2023 group build, the monogram 1955 Ford F100 street rod. I'll start with a couple pieces that are pretty much already done. I have my jack with the blue body and the orange handle, and the gas can. It's all done, all cleared, ready to probably sit in the bed of the truck. Okay, so here we are. I wet sanded everything and I got everything smooth. I burned through in a couple spots, but no big deal because I knew I was going to be repainting it at the very least. So I painted the orange. First, I taped off over the blue and I repainted the orange. And then I took my 10mm Tamiya masking tape and taped over the orange. And now I'm ready to spray the blue. We'll get the blue sprayed back over it. And we'll see what it looks like after that. Okay, so I got the blue sprayed on again and removed the tape from the orange, and everything's looking good. So I'm back to the clear stage again. Hopefully I can get it mixed up right and sprayed right and not have to go through this process for a third time. So looking good, looking good. See, today's Wednesday the 1st, so tomorrow, Thursday the 2nd, I should be able to get the clear on, hopefully. So we'll see what happens. Okay, so here we are on actually Saturday the 4th before I was able to get the clear sprayed on. And while I was doing it, something I discovered with the Cobra motor paints here is, along with the Createx High Gloss 4053 Clear, when I did my initial test that you guys saw a couple videos ago on the Cobra motor paints, I sprayed it on a test hood, and on the same day, probably a couple hours later, I sprayed the Createx 4050 Clear. It went on beautifully. I put on 3 or 4 coats, and then I wet sanded it and polished it and waxed it, and it just looks flawless. Okay, 2 things I've had an issue with the 55 Ford here is between the paints and using a little bit of a different clear. This 4053 is a little bit different than the 4050, at least from what I've gathered here. The 4053 is, how do I say it? It doesn't need to be thinned as much. And that's one thing I've learned with the 2 things that I've done is I've over thinned it a little bit, and it didn't need to be. With the 4050, what I would do is I would make up a bottle ahead of time, a little bottle like this. I would just make it up ahead of time and use it as I go along. Not so much with the 4053. It's a little more sensitive to time than the 4050 is. So what I learned with this is, don't thin it as much. Don't make it ahead of time. Only use it when you're going to mix it up, when you're going to use it. And I started with some light coats over the Cobra motor paints, because initially today, again, when I sprayed it on the other side here, I'll see this one did the same thing. It like beat it up, so I have to wet sand that off. But the rest of it, you know, I learned as I was going along. And that sprayed pretty smooth, just a little bit of wet sanding. And this is only a couple coats, so I got to put more on, of course. But for the Cobra motor paints, what I would strongly suggest, and that was after it cured. Now, the first test I did was it didn't really cure. It only had a couple hours. Maybe that makes a difference. But I would suggest definitely using their 2K clear that they recommend. Or possibly, I wasn't going to necessarily try it. If I had a spare part to spray, I maybe would have. But I was going to try some Tamiya TS13 clear spray to see if it was a water-based thing or a, you know, compared to the lacquer. But I didn't do the lacquer. So if you're going to use water-based with that, tread carefully and start with very light coats. A couple of light coats, just barely spray it on. And that's what worked. I did the fenders that way. And again, I still need to put a couple of coats on. I'm trying to keep everything uniform. So a couple light coats and then a medium coat for that, along with the cab and the hood, which I think turned out pretty good. And I actually lined up the stripes a little better this time. I taped off and painted over a little bit, and I lined up the stripe a little bit better. But these both, I went light coats and then a medium coat. And for the cab, what I did was I mixed up a whole new batch. Did not thin it as much, and I just started right out with a light to medium coat, so it covered pretty good. So that's what I learned on the paints and the clears there. Valuable lessons for future reference for myself. And then the tailgate stripes. Up next on Monday, maybe Sunday afternoon, I don't know. Probably Monday, I will get the black pinstripe separating the colors. Decals on. So that's next for this one. But until then, this is Craig at Stumpy Grump Scales Speed Shop, signing off, saying thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.